Welcome back to the Packer Mentality Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Corrigan, and regardless of how you found me, thank you so much for being here. Last week, the Packers cut down to their 53-man roster. I made a prediction on what names would be on that roster, and I had 49 of the initial 53 that they kept on the 29th. A few things have changed since then, but I am feeling overall pretty good about that. Before we get to any Bears game preview that I'm going to be posting on Friday, let's talk about how this roster is an upgrade over 2022 at most positions. Overall, this roster is the youngest in the league. It's the youngest since the 2017 Browns, which I believe lost every game, so hoping the Packers do it better. Now, this is comparing 2023 to 2022. And when we're starting at quarterback, you don't go from a four-time NFL MVP and a future Hall of Famer to a first-time starter and say you've gotten better. At least not yet. So where can Jordan Love be better than Aaron Rodgers? Again, we're talking about the version of Rodgers that we got last season. Jordan Love definitely is going to be more athletic than Aaron was last season. We're going to see more of the playbook involving him keeping the ball to run. He's also going to take the run option a bit more than Aaron did last season. He's going to utilize the middle of the field more. Rodgers avoided it like the plague over the last few seasons. Jordan will throw over the middle. It may result in a few extra turnovers because there's just more risk in throwing it over the middle. But overall, I think it's going to help the offense. Jordan already seems to have a better relationship with his receivers and the rookies on the offense overall. Rodgers didn't do any of the young players any favors last season, and it showed on the field, honestly, to his detriment. And I think Jordan can be a better leader this season on the field than Aaron was last season. Now, this might be hard to believe, but think about in your life and your work. Do you know people, bosses that are not happy with their situation at work? Those guys don't make great leaders. Rodgers was visibly unhappy and frustrated last season. Honestly, some of his displays on the field when things didn't go his way wasn't a great look. And I expect Jordan to be better than that this season, regardless of how things are going. At running back, this is pretty much a wash from 2022. Same two guys are there. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are back as the top two. They did keep Emmanuel Wilson, and maybe he can provide a lift somewhere along the line. But overall, I think this group is about the same as last season. Offensive line. Despite keeping everyone from last season, it's not equal. This is an upgrade from last season. You're going to get a healthy David Bakhtiari, or at least as healthy as he can be, and a healthy Elton Jenkins from the start. And returning everyone else and having that continuity is a big deal for an offensive line. Knowing how to work together is a huge key for any offensive line group. Plus, the emergence or the development of Rasheed Walker and Sean Ryan makes this a deep group. And I expect this group to be a strength of this team. Tight end. You're going from Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan, a lot of experience there, to all rookies. So you got to say this is going to be worse than 2022, but only until we find out what these guys can do in real games. There's a lot of high expectations for these tight ends. This is a much more athletic group that the Packers hope to challenge defenses with. If things go to plan, I think at the end of the season, we could say that this was a better group than last season. Wide receiver. These guys are much faster and more athletic, and I cannot stress that enough. The only negative on this year's group is a lack of experience. In 2022, we had three guys on the roster with experience. You had Randall Cobb, who was past his prime, Sammy Watkins, who did not make it through the whole season and didn't really produce anything, and Alan Lazard, who I think the Packers really expected too much from. But even Alan Lazard didn't have a lot of NFL starting experience. Now, in 2023, you still have two guys with starting NFL experience. You also have Samari Torrey, who at least has NFL experience, and they are a much younger and more talented group or trio than the guys who left. So I think this is an upgrade at the wide receiver position. On the defense side of the ball, the Packers have been remaking this group for a couple years now. And to a certain extent, the results are going to be affected by what Joe Barry decides to do with them. So how do these position groups look? Defensive line. You lost a couple of veterans, but overall, I think it's a better group than last season. Group last year and the year before that, they couldn't stop the run, and they had trouble rushing the passer late in the season. This group in 2023 still might have trouble stopping the run, but it's a much more athletic group that should provide a better pass rush. On the edge, it's better than 2022. Rashawn Gary went down last season, halfway through the season, and the lack of quality depth was a problem, and the pass rush suffered. Gary's going to return, and now they've added Lucas Van Ness and Brenton Cox to the returning Preston Smith, Kingsley Enagbari, and Justin Hollins. All these guys can rush the passer, and they should be better against the run. Inside linebacker, you're pretty much returning the same group. Campbell, Walker, McDuffie, and Wilson. Quay Walker should get better from his rookie season, but overall I'm going to say basically the same as 2022. At cornerback, this group is about the same as last season, maybe slightly better. You'll have Eric Stokes returning at some point this season, and the addition of Carrington Valentine to the starting three of Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, and Keyshawn Nixon. This should be a formidable group. Finally, at safety, it's actually worse than 2022, which is hard to believe because the play at safety last season was not good. Packers went out and shopped the clearance section, and unless one of these guys has a career year that no one saw coming, this could be the Achilles heel of the defense. Hope not, but it's not a very sexy group. The specialists. Overall, this group is slightly worse. And I think you have to say that because at the most visible position, the kicker, you're going from Mason Crosby, and even though he did not quite have the range last season that he normally did because of injury, he was still very reliable. Replacing him with a rookie, and that's a big question mark on how Anders Carlson is going to perform this year. He's got big shoes to fill. At punter, you're going from Pat O'Donnell to Daniel Whelan. Whelan's probably got a bit better leg. We'll see how he does in cold weather kicking and how reliable he is on his holds. Long snapper, also a change here, going to Orzek, probably about the same, maybe a little bit better. I don't recall the snaps being too terrible last season. And Orzek has been around a little bit, so it should be, a little bit better. This leaves the 2023 Packers with 3 position groups that are worse than last season. But they do have 7 position groups that are better or about the same from the 2023 group. Is this a recipe for success, or are we looking at a disaster? We're about to find out. I'll be back on Friday with a preview on our old friends from Chicago. Until then, have a great week, be safe, and go Pack Go.